Well,
Uh,
you know what leaders don't realize is the staff is what makes them. They don't. I did not make myself a great CNO. The staff and the leaders that allowed me to be their CNO made me that. They responded. They gave me the information that I needed so that I could advocate for them. When I was in management, the same thing. And the staff will make or break you.
100%.
Yep.
100%.
And if you don't realize that as a leader, you better get into a different profession, not
Amen.
leading.
Amen.
Hello, and welcome to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. This is where we share stories for inspiration, entertainment, and encouragement because we all know emergency nurses have the best stories. Now, here's your host, Kevin McFarland.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. I'm your host, Kevin McFarland. It's been a while since our last episode, so thank you for downloading this episode and thank you for your continued support. Today, I have an incredible episode lined up for you. I had the pleasure of interviewing Anne-Marie Papa, a remarkable nurse who's not only excelled in the emergency department, but has made significant impact outside of the emergency department. She's a true nurse leader and has influenced countless nurses throughout her career. If you're a nurse leader or aspire to be one, this episode is a must listen. We delve into some valuable lessons that a nurse leader needs to know in order to be an effective nurse leader. You don't want to miss this episode. Now, as you know, I sometimes do. We kind of jumped into the conversation, and then about 10 minutes later, I asked her to introduce herself because we just kind of jumped right in, and it was a natural conversation, and I don't want you to miss the lessons that we learned there too. So it kind of seems to start in the middle, but sometimes we do that here at the podcast. So sit back, relax, enjoy this enlightening conversation with the amazing Anne-Marie Papa. So are you now then officially retired? Or are you still doing stuff on the side?
Well,
What are you doing?
I
What are you doing
still,
with yourself?
so I tried to retire, but Jefferson asked me to stay on as what they titled nurse leader emeritus. So I'm the first nurse leader emeritus there. And what I do is really um, projects for the CNE or the other
Nice.
CNOs or
Nice.
the managers, whatever needs. Most recently, they had like a catalyst program for the nurse managers. So I helped them facilitate projects. And that program enabled them to, either implement something new that they wanted to try or try to navigate the system to see how they could do some project planning. So I worked with them on that. I am working with one of the nurse managers who's new in the role to get her moving and squaring up. And then I'm doing a couple of lectures on the circuit for them as well.
Good for you.
So
That's awesome.
that's one thing. And then I wanted to keep my hand in the clinical piece because people still ask me clinical things and I feel like I need to. So they wanted me to stay on as a supervisor where I was the CNO, and that just didn't feel right to me.
Oh,
Like now
be a little
the new
weird.
chief nurse and all are like, yeah, my God, you'll be fine. I said, no, because people will come to me. It's a different role. So I do that and in a whole different state and a whole different. I came to Jersey, with my summer home, and I just work like one day a pay for them. And then, of course, they had a manager go out on FMLA. So I helped them in the summer part time um, navigate that, help the staff with that. And then I'm very active in the Pennsylvania Student Nurses Association. I do a lot of mentoring for them. And now Dana Lisa has asked me to do some work for the Jersey Nurses Association. So I do that. And then people will call me to consult and look at stuff. And if I like it, I'll go do it. And if I don't, I'll say, I can't do that all my time right now.
Yeah. Good for you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. That's cool.
But that's one of the great things about nursing that I always tell people. If you have an opportunity to do something, try it. It doesn't mean you have to do it for the rest of your life. But if somebody opens a door for you, walk through it and see if it works for you. If
Amen.
it doesn't work for you, then say, hey, you know what? I need to step back. But and even if it doesn't work for you, you learn something. Like I never said no to any opportunity, except when they wanted me to be the manager of the emergency department and I didn't want to go on to day shift. So, and
Yeah.
I had a leader that said to me, you'll never get anywhere in leadership if you don't go now. And I said, my kid's a little not the right time for me. And then sure enough, look where I am. I guess I did get somewhere.
Guess they were wrong. So
So that's why I tell people, work on your own time frame. You may want to be a Kevin McFarland. You may want to be a Patty Howard. You may want to be a Shantae Harris. You may want to be an Anne-Marie Papa, but aren't going to go at it the same way that person did. So go on your own path. I decided I'm going to quote and make a new quote that's mine because people always say to me, how are we going to fill your shoes? Oh my gosh, we're going to never fill your shoes. So I always tell people, you don't need to fill my shoes. Please wear your own. You'll walk further in them and they won't hurt your feet. But you can put mine on the shelf to remind you of things you might want to do. So I'm going to
nice.
make that quote. I'm going to say that's an Anne-Marie Papa quote.
That's that's a good one. And that's often, it's one of the things I often see from like new leaders, and a lot of times new leaders try to be like a second version of somebody else. And
Mhm.
the reality is we know like everyone's got their own path and everyone's going to do things a little different. And, I've had a few mentors that I was like, oh my God, I want to be just like that person. And the first one that comes to mind is when I was an instructor. I worked with a guy named Cy Stockoff, who was an amazing EMS instructor. And I remember like everything I did was trying to be like Cy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wanted to be like a mini Cy. And then I realized like I just do things differently. I just do things differently than he does. And well, there's still a lot of him in my heart and a lot of him
Yep.
that I've adopted and have taken on, and ways he's influenced me in ways that, countless ways. Um, we did things differently. I couldn't be
Yep.
a side two. I had to be Kevin one. So,
Yep, exactly. You have to be the best you that you can be.
mhm,
You can, take all of the information that people are giving you, be a sponge. Take the things that you like that people do that you see that they demonstrate the qualities that you may want to emulate. And, you learn a lot from the people that you don't want to be like as just as much.
amen,
You know what not to do. And so
amen,
you just put that in your head and you synthesize it and you know, that's
100%.
how it works.
Yeah, I think that's important in leadership and in just in general. I was having a conversation with a nurse today, just today. So this random nurse on Facebook got into my Facebook group and started asking questions about, she was 3 weeks out in her nursing orientation in the ED, and she feels completely lost and completely overwhelmed.
Yeah,
And
that's
like,
exactly right.
and I go, that's exactly where you're supposed to be. And everyone gave her amazing advice. Like, and it was like
Good.
a who's who of ENA leaders who were like, you're gonna be all right. Like, chill out,
Yeah.
you're fine. Um, and everyone pointed her to some resources, and we ended up getting into a conversation. I was like, hey, send me a message and we'll chat a little bit. And so we did. We chatted a little bit this morning. And one of the things she said to me is she goes, I feel like I just need to memorize these protocols. I need to memorize how to do this stuff. And I go, well, here's the thing. I go, memorizing protocols is like a cookbook, right? Like
Yeah.
it'll give you the things that you need to put in to make something taste good. But the real beauty is knowing why that something is there.
Exactly.
And I go, if you're just mindlessly following protocols, you might as well be a robot. You're gonna be a robot
Mhm.
nurse, and you can follow the protocols, but you don't know why the hell you're doing the things you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm like, forget the protocols, just know the why. What is the thing in the protocol trying to accomplish? Why are they thinking, okay, this guy has chest pain. Why do we need a troponin? Why do we need an EKG? Um, know the why, and then the how
Yep.
becomes easy.
So you can connect it. I always tell people when you're orienting people, I always like the people that ask me 101 questions because
100%.
in my mind, they're taking that information and they again are synthesizing it in their mind and trying to make it their own rather than just like I always use the cramp cycle. We all had to memorize that in nursing school. Do you think I know one thing about that? Not a damn thing. Not at all. Did it help me with anything? All it helped me do is learn to memorize something.
Yep.
But, and I can look it up if I need it, you know? So
Yeah.
that's what I always try to tell people that let them ask you questions. Let them try to figure out for themselves, what you already know, because, you're the experts are hard for preceptors
It
because we don't break things down well, you
it's
know?
really true because you're thinking up here
Mhm.
and like they're thinking down here, and the
Yep.
reality is like, you know, if you've ever, the reality is, I think the best preceptors are nurses who've been a nurse for about a year to the point where they're starting to feel pretty confident and they feel okay, at that year, 2 year mark. They're
2 year
feeling
I would
pretty,
give you.
they're feeling pretty
Yeah.
confident. They know the stuff, but they're not
Right.
cocky to the point where they're like, oh, I got this.
Right. And it's not that you don't want to break it down, but you sometimes can't. It's just but there are those that can. There are absolutely wonderful educators that are experts that can do that, and that's why they do education,
Yep.
and whatever, but, there are some people that if you just throw them into precepting just because they're a great nurse and they're fabulous, and you don't teach them the how to break things down, that that's where you're gonna
And
fail,
one
both
of the things
them
that
and the person.
one of the things I always say is that being a nurse, being a great nurse doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great preceptor. The same way being a
Absolutely.
great nurse doesn't mean you're going to be a great leader.
Totally.
There's a there's a different skill set for each of those
Yep.
things. And I think that some people like just don't get it. They think, okay, you're a
Yep.
great nurse, you can be a great nurse leader. And that could be, it could be true, but it
Yeah.
could be completely wrong.
Yeah, it's very different, like, we don't give nurse leaders the amount of like, when I became a, uh, director, they just put me in and said, "Okay, fine, do it." And I
Yep.
got really no orientation, and that was probably 20 some years ago, and I had been a nurse for 20 years, 20 some years. So, I did know the clinical stuff, but I didn't know all that budget stuff. I didn't know all that. I had to learn it. Now, at least we do things like manager boot camps and leader orientations and things like that to really help them, because I think for them to network with people of like minds is very helpful for them, for anybody, for
100%.
all of us, because then you think, "Oh, it's not just me that doesn't get this."
Yep, 100%. And so one of the things that I told this girl who's, just new to the ED, I was like, "Well, and you're in the right place. You're in a Facebook community that's gonna, is
Yep.
doing the thing you're doing. And while we have some burnt out nurses in here, we have some amazing nurses in here." And then two, I recommended she listen to some of the podcasts. I'm like, I have podcasts from
Yeah.
like some of the amazing nurse leaders and nurses who will tell you the same thing that like when they
Yep.
first started, they didn't know shit either. And
Yep.
and that was okay. And that worked out okay. And it turned out okay. So I was like, you
Yeah.
know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. And some of us didn't even know what we didn't know. I got
right?
1 day orientation and said, "Okay, go ahead, you're there." I'm like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah.
fine. I'll
Yep.
do what I can do." And
Yep.
that was in the '70s when you didn't even have ED trained docs. You had docs in the box.
Oof.
So that was a real
Oh
it's
man.
definitely a different mindset back then. But I think the key is knowing what you don't know and not being afraid to say, "Hey, I don't know, but I'm happy to learn. Show me."
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you talked about the fact that you are now recently retired or semi-retired. Uh,
So, why?
Retirement's not really working out for you. But how long have you been a nurse?
I have been a nurse, 47 years.
47 years. Holy cow.
Mhm.
Oh, one of the things I didn't do,
I've
and
worked in a hospital for 51
that's a long time.
because I worked when I went to nursing school. You were allowed when you were a senior in high school to be a nursing assistant. And that's what I was.
Jumped into the questions, but I didn't give you a chance to introduce yourself. I just assumed everybody knows who you are, I guess. So, we just kind of jumped in and started talking. So
That's okay.
for those who don't know, tell them who you are and what you do and a little bit about yourself.
Hey, well, I'm happy to be here. My name is Anne Marie Papa. I have been a nurse, as Kevin said, for 47 years, worked in a hospital for over 50. I'm proud of that. Have started out my career as a nursing assistant and then worked my way up through staff nurse, triage nurse, charge nurse, educator, manager, director, chief nursing officer, whatever. And then was involved in the Emergency Nurses Association since 1978 when my boss told me I had to join, which I didn't understand. Why did I have to join? Because it was like $35 that I had to pay every year, and I was making $5 an hour. Did she not know that that was a lot of money for me?
Five
So I
dollars, five
joined
dollars an hour
five
as a nurse. Oh,
$5 an hour. And actually online, I made $5.05 because I
wow.
had a bachelor's degree.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
wow. Okay.
Mhm, mhm. I made
Extra 5 cents for that
$5.05
bachelor's degree. That's
for
awesome.
that. Yep, absolutely. So then I joined the Emergency Nurses Association, and the Philadelphia chapter had a wonderful leader named Rita Selmer, who really had a good way of um, growing new leaders and being the behind the scenes person. Like she was the president for Pennsylvania, but she never really wanted to go further than that. And then Emma Seibert and Linda Snyder and then Kathy Robinson came along. And, we all it was like, just like every state council, you grow you're young and you move them forward. And I had some really wonderful opportunities. And most of my opportunities were at the local level because I raised my kids for the first 25 years of my career. And then after that, I started to get involved in the state and then national. And I had the opportunity to serve as national president in 2011, which was probably one of my favorite things to do. I enjoyed serving the members. I enjoyed meeting all of the members. One of the things I said in my president's speech is, I'm so happy that all of you voted for me. Thank you so much. But really, thank you to the ones that didn't vote for me because you'll keep me honest and you'll come in and, but please do it respectfully. And people did.
Uh,
They really did.
I
So
love I
that's it.
love that. I love that you're like, hey, even if I wasn't your pick, keep an eye on me, keep me
Thanks. Yeah.
honest. I think that's
Yeah.
a fair thing to say. What a great self-aware thing to just be like, hey, it's all right.
Yeah. You can't I always say if you please everybody all the time, you're not really quite doing your job. There's always somebody that's going to not like something that you do. I
And
love Paul McCartney and Bon Jovi, but I'm sure there's somebody out there that thinks they're not so great, at all. So that's life. And you just have to, that's what makes chocolate and vanilla. If everybody ate chocolate ice cream, I'd be really annoyed because there'd be none for me, you know? And so in January of 2023, I retired, semi-retired, I guess. And I was very fortunate that Jefferson kept me on as nurse leader emeritus. And what I do is any special project that either the chief nurse executive, the other managers, the other um, CNOs don't have time to do or don't really, have the expertise in that because they haven't been in the nursing for as long as and I have the opportunity to do that. And then, of course, I still am involved in the ENA and the wellness committee and, as the academy and whatever, I happen to be one of the trailblazers, original trailblazers. I guess it was 2 years ago with Andrew Bowman. And we did some, really some great work.
I'm in a trailblazer group now, and
It's great.
it's just cool. And
Yeah.
for those of you who don't know, it's basically where the academy takes on some projects, and some of the projects they take on are it may be like a position statement, it may be recommendations or whatever the case may be. But yeah, I'm always humbled. I've only been in the academy a couple of years. I look around the academy room, and I look around and I think to myself, holy cow, they let me in here. Holy wow, this is pretty cool. So
That's how I felt. I was in second class. And I thought, really, people said, why didn't you go in the first class, Anne-Marie, before I was president? I said, what are you kidding? That's like Kathy Robinson and Sue Sheehy and Frank Cole and, all these fabulous. And they said, Aaron, you did a lot of work. Just try it. So sure enough, the next year I got in, it was like, wow, how about that?
yeah,
But I guess, I think that's one of the things as nurses, we're not really very good at promoting ourselves.
yeah,
We're really great
absolutely.
at promoting other people. And what we have to realize is you do have to promote what you've done because somebody's watching that wants to learn from what you did
Good
and
point.
wants to move it on. So it's not just about, oh, Amory Papa got in the academy. Kevin McFarland got XYZ. It's about, you know, a homegrown nurse moved along and was able to go on a career path or a career trajectory that he or she accomplished this. I might want to do that. Let me have a conversation with that person and find out how I could do it.
Absolutely,
It
absolutely.
makes well the thing that I always say to and this is the generation of like nurse people that have been at emergency nurses maybe between 5 and 7 years. They like, they have the high five club for all their certifications. They want the letters. It's not about the damn letters. It's about what those letters mean and how you use them to,
Amen.
further this. And it's not a checkbox. And I think people feel like, okay, I got this, and I got to get the academy check. It's not a checkbox, and it's a lifelong commitment. As you know, you're still doing things. I'm still doing things with the academy. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not, and I'm not going to tell you that there's not people that got in and checked the box and you haven't seen them again. And I'm not saying
100%.
that's right, wrong, or and that's still, I'm a fellow in the American Academy of Nurses, the ANA, and the same thing with them. The people check it off the box. It's even harder. They're murderous, but it's not a box to check. It's really something it's a part of you, and it's your, I don't like. It's just an ambiance of how you are really going to grow our profession and grow that future. Not
Amen.
about you.
Amen.
Not about you checking your box.
I got into the
There
academy.
you go.
And it's an honor and a privilege, and it's a cool thing. And I feel like I have to be, as a member of the academy, I feel like I have to also be like, okay, look, you're not going to get in just, just because you've done a bunch of committees and you've done a lot of committee work
Yeah.
over the last few years. It's just not enough. Like,
No,
everyone's
it's
done
hard
that.
to explain.
Everyone,
It's really hard.
yeah.
It's in your DNA somehow. You get there and you feel it. You know it.
And there's people there there's people who I know who have not gotten into the academy that absolutely will at some point. There's no doubt in my mind that they will absolutely be an academy member, and probably worthy right this minute as an academy member. But then there's others that
But did they take enough time to write their letters? See, that's the thing. I'm telling you,
that's a good
we
question.
go back and forth. Patty Howard and I just are writing to get somebody in the American Academy of Nurses. And they kind of asked us at the last minute, like it was like maybe a month. And I said, Patty, you know how I am, because Patty and I wrote to get Carolyn Jones in, and we got her, but took 6 months. We met with her, we met with each other, because Emery, we can do this one. I know this. I said, okay, all right. So we did. But in that month, must have had like 4 calls, and the person's like, wow, I really should have done this earlier. And I said, yeah, you see why?
I don't know if it's the same person I know that is applying to the academy, and I'm like going, boy, that's got to be a daunting task.
This is the ANA
Yeah,
Academy.
yeah, same.
Yeah, it is.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know someone who applied for ANA, and I'm like going, I think that's probably a little
It
harder.
is a daunting task.
I was like,
It
that's
is.
probably a little bit more daunting than the ENA Academy. So,
Right. And we were honest with the person. I would have liked to have waited another year, because I would like to have seen a little bit more research and publishing, because whoever was mentoring this person before didn't really give them the value of publishing some of the things that were done, and some amazing things. But I think, Patty and I were able to skirt it in a way that we're happy. So
good. Well, that's
and
incredible.
sometimes it takes at least 3 times to get into there, because it's really hard.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So
Yeah.
and I told, the person that I'm writing a letter for has applied. This is going to be her 3rd time applying, and I'm like,
Wow.
it doesn't make it any less impactful when you get it. So
Nope. When you get it, you
So-
get it.
when you get it, you get it, and no one's going to ask you how many
Yep.
times it took you to get in.
Nope.
So
Right. That's what I always say. What do they call the person that graduated last in medical school? Doctor.
doctor, yeah, exactly. It's true. It's true. So,
Yep.
anyways, so why nursing? Why did you get into nursing?
Oh dear, that's a whole other story. So, when I was a little girl, I lived in Philadelphia, and we had a block that you could walk around without crossing the street. And I guess I was about 5 years old. Now, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, so it was a different world out there. So I was allowed to walk around the block by myself. And there was a woman named Mrs. Sweeney that was a nurse, and everybody came to her for everything. She was able to fix everything, and I thought, I want to be just like her. That's what I want to be.
That's
So,
cool.
and that's how I ended up becoming a nurse. And when I was president, actually, you have to write a column every year, every month when you're president. And I wrote about that. And I guess maybe 5, 6, 7 months after I wrote it, I get a phone call from somebody named Margaret Stelhut, who is the granddaughter of Mrs. Sweeney, who
No
I used to
kidding.
babysit. And she said, Anne Marie, you talked about my grandmom. I read it in the doctor's office. I was in the doctor's office and I saw your name and I just had to pick up this. And she was like on the phone, like, I can't believe that. That's so wonderful. So I use that and I tell people that is you don't really understand sometimes the impact of the little things that you do. That little pebble that I just wrote about Mrs. Sweeney gave her wonderful memories about, her grandmother. There's another one I wrote on when I wrote about one of my mentors, and I sent it to her because she wasn't an ED nurse, because I wanted her to know what she meant to me.
Yeah.
And her husband at the time was um, in a memory center and he had Parkinson's. And so he really was in the late stages of dementia. So she took the article to him and she read it to him. She called me up on the phone almost in tears. She said, Anne Marie, I read your article to Porter. And she said, and he said, that's that blonde whippersnapper from Villanova, isn't it? And she said, yes, it is. And she said, you know what, Anne Marie? I had my Porter back for 30 minutes.
That's
And I
cool.
thought, wow. So that's what I tell people, you don't even realize, and I'm sure every person out there has plenty of these kinds of stories. I was just fortunate that I was able to hear about it, or when people have a patient that comes back and tells them that, they made the difference or whatever. There are hundreds and thousands that don't come back and tell you, but you have that impact.
Amen.
And that's the wonderful thing about nursing. And I learned that early on when I was at age 5 with Mrs. Sweeney. And her daughter actually tapped me. Well, because we had caps back then in the 70s.
Oh,
And then, so yeah, I'm still connected. I still see her now and again. My grandson went to school with her grandson. So it's really funny
how
how
cool is that?
yeah. My mother used to tell me, you got to be really careful in life, Anne Marie, because the backside that you kick today, you'll be kissing tomorrow.
True. You never know.
You
It's kind
don't.
of a funny roundabout, and especially in like small communities like nursing, like,
Yeah.
the person you meet today may be your boss tomorrow, or you
Yep.
may be their boss, and
Uh-huh.
all of the above things happen, right? Like you never,
Yep.
and that's why I always tell people, be careful of the bridges you burn. Now,
Yeah.
if it's a bridge that needs burning, burn that motherfucker. But
Yeah.
if it's not, like, be careful, because you never know
Yeah.
when.
Yep.
And you never know, like, one of the things I find all the time is you never know who's gonna remember you and for what.
That's why I do a lecture about what's your motives. And I've done that for years. This is from way back in 2006. I did this. And when it was about workplace violence and, bullying and that kind of stuff. But I've taken it off in different ways for, when you listen to people speak, their body language, their facial expressions, those are the things that you read. It's not the words that they say. It's the things that you read. And you think in your head, what's the motive for this? And if I don't like what I think a motive is, I will never support it, even if it's a wonderful thing.
Yep.
Because I just feel like the, you have to have, and listen, none of us are perfect, but I always really feel like I try to leave places better than where I found them. And I try to come at it from um, a place of integrity and honesty and justice.
Love that. I love that. I think it's it's an important piece for nurse leaders and nurse leaders to hear. Like,
Yeah.
that's the kind of nurse leader that people wanna work for. You
Yeah.
know?
Well, yep. Well, I usually never have a hard time with people that work for me. One of the other things that I did when I retired is I got these letters from people's families every year between Thanksgiving and Christmas. People who directly reported to me, I would write their family a thank you note.
Wow.
Say, hey, Like I would know your wife, Jenny, but if I didn't know her, I'd say to the family of Kevin McFarland, I want to thank you for sharing Kevin with me for the past year. I know he missed birthdays and games and holidays and many, many things. And I know we interrupted your dinner on many occasions with phone calls asking him to come in. But I want to tell you about a particular thing that happened. And then I tell them about a patient that they saved a life or about they worked so somebody else could have off for a birthday that was, a monumental one or something like that. And I wrote them. And every now, the staff the leaders that report us to me or the staff when I was in management would say, "Oh my gosh, my family just loved that letter. Thank you so much." When I retired, family members wrote me letters.
How
Dear
cool
Anne
is that?
Marie, dear Anne Marie, I want to thank you for the letters that you wrote telling me about Kevin, so to speak. But I want to tell you what they said about you. It was really interesting. And I
How
kept them
cool
all.
is that? How
I
cool
kept
is
them all.
that?
So to me, that told me the impact. What did it cost me, Kevin? A card and a stamp
Nothing.
and a bit of my time. And, I used to keep notes in people's files. Like if they did something, I just put a sticky note in their file. So then I open their file up and I say, oh, this is the story I'm going to tell.
Yeah, I love that. Oh my God, what a
Yeah, that
great
was,
thing to do. What a cool
uh
thing.
yep.
Because
I'm
we
big
don't
on those kind of thank you notes.
we
I
don't
think that means a lot.
we don't think about that, but like our work impacts our home life so significantly. Like
Yeah.
more than any other, I think any other profession in that we it's
Yep.
something you're not just a nurse from 8 to 5, you know?
Yeah.
And you
I,
take things home with you.
you do. I learned it in my first management job. One of the girls who worked there, her husband actually taught me that. She had really struggled with getting a full-time job because of the hours that she had to work because of his hours. And she had 3 kids and she was juggling things. So I said, well, we will fix this. Come on, let's go. So we looked, we sat down, we got her full time. So I guess about a month after she was full time, this was before cell phones. This was in the late 80s, early 90s. And he calls me up and he says, Emery Papa, yes. This is Denny. I said, yeah, Denny. He says, I want to talk to you about my wife. And I said, okay, what? He said, I don't know how to say this, but I need to thank you. And I'm thinking, "Phew." You're thinking, oh, what's that do? That's the first let me think. He says, I want to thank you. She's worked there for this many years. And until you came, nobody took the time to ask her about her schedule to make it work. He said,
Wow.
anything that I can ever do for you, you have my support. And I just need to thank you. And
How
I thought,
cool is that?
wow. So then I realized that what my job was, because I didn't want to do management. I was, I ran that ED on night shift. I trained everybody. The docs, if I told them that something that looked blue to them was orange and said it was orange, they'd say, okay, it's orange. They would, and I was really proud of those clinical skills. And I did not want to do management. So I went kicking and screaming into it. But when I got that phone call, I realized that the experience and knowledge that I was bringing to the table was going to be there to serve the staff. And that was my job, to serve the staff, not to serve the patients anymore. Let the staff recognize to serve the patients, trust them. My job was to get the best that I could for the staff and to be there for them and to represent them and what they needed on the front line. I did that all the way up to when I was a chief nurse. When COVID hit, our CEO gave me a hard time about putting extra nurses in the ICU because that we had to turn people, do all that stuff. Emery, you just flip the person. I said, oh, really? Really? Come
Come on
on,
down.
let's go. So I had her come down and she dressed up and she looked at it and she's gone halfway through and she said, I'm done. Whatever you need. Whatever you need.
Good for
And
good
so
for
I
you and good for
realized
her.
But I realized then that, I'm still impacting patients because I'm impacting the staff and not how powerful that was.
Yeah, happy nurses equals happy patients. And
Always said that.
and I don't think a lot of leaders realize that and make that correlation. And it's to their detriment, right? Because
Mhm.
then the nurses I see it all the time. I see it in different organizations. I've seen it in every organization I've been in. or do you have a leader who doesn't value the staff and doesn't treat the staff like they have value? And then the high value nurses leave. Like
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
when
That's exactly what happens.
you lose your best nurses and you're like going, crap, this is like one of our best. And she just walked out the door because she didn't feel appreciated. And
Mhm.
that appreciation may have been something as simple as, you know what, I really wanted my birthday off and they couldn't even give me my birthday off.
Right.
Or it could be, something as simple as, I just don't feel appreciated here. And
Yeah.
then they bounce. And
Yeah.
it's like, that happens all the time. That
Yeah.
happens all
And
the
yep. And that's what I said during COVID. I said, if you during COVID as a leader were trying to get the trust of your staff, it's way too late. Because today I'm telling them stand on their head. Tomorrow I'm telling them use this mask. The next day I'm telling them, oh no, but you don't need that. You need this mask. The next day we're reprocessing them. The next day we're reusing. You know, they had to trust in their leaders because it wasn't a time that you could go and say, oh, let's put a group together and decide what we're going to do, which is typically how lead, try to lead. But you couldn't do that at that time because things were coming so fast and so quick. So you had to explain that. And I remember like second week into it, when we had our first patient, they called me. It was a Saturday. They told, hey, we just got a patient and they're positive for COVID. I said, I'm coming in. So I called our chief medical officer. I said, Ange, I'm going in. She goes, I'm coming with you. And that whole weekend, either she or I was there to support the staff. And, that went through the whole organization. So whatever they needed, they knew we were there for them. But we're asking them to do all kinds of crazy stuff. And if they don't trust you, then you can't
host.
say, okay, now I want you to trust me. Now, crisis is not the time.
Mhm. Yep. Those relationships have to have been built long before that
Mhm.
crisis time,
Absolutely.
for sure.
That's somebody said, they called you. I said, well, why would they not call me? I'm their chief nurse. Of
Mhm.
course they'll call me. Of course I'm going to go in. Of course I'm going to, and if I couldn't go in, I would have had somebody else go in my stead because I get it. I have a
Yeah.
life too, you know.
Yeah. I remember one night when I was a director in the ER, I get a call from my CNO and my CNO goes, "Hey, where are you?" And I'm like, "I'm at home sitting on my couch. Where are you?" She's like, "I'm in your emergency department." I go, "Well, why are you in my emergency department?" And she said, "Well, because your staff called me because we had something bad happen." And I was like,
Ooh,
"Okay." I go, "Well, who called you?"
I'll
And
be right there.
they're like, "Who called you?" They're like, "The house supervisor." I go, "How come the house supervisor didn't call me?" And she's
Right.
like, "I assume they did." And I go, "Well, they did not. So I'm on my
Yeah.
way. I'll be there in a minute."
Yeah.
And sure enough, I went in there and she was there and she was just trying to console the staff. We had something bad happen that, I
Yeah,
mean,
that happens, right? Yeah. Well, we did right after I guess it was the second week of COVID, you could see people were really starting to struggle. So I said to him, my boss, I need to do a webinar on trauma informed care. He goes, why? It's just Emory. I said, listen, I'm telling you, I'm doing it. I'm doing a day one or I'm doing a night one. Okay, whatever. Go ahead. So I did it and we opened it to the whole hospital. Didn't just have to be nurses. And the amount of emails that we got, because, I was trying to tell people that what they're feeling is a normal response to an abnormal situation, really, which is what was COVID. And people said that made such a difference for me to hear that. And thank you so much. And then, of course, my boss got emails. Oh, thank you for having everybody do that. That was so important. And we really made a difference for us. And now we're trying to make sense of this now. We get it. It's not us, it's the situation.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So you do have to be in tune with the people that are, like I said, it's a privilege to lead and you need to be in touch with the people that allow you to lead them, to give you the privilege.
Absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I think that's something, gosh, if I could just get every nurse leader to just hang out and spend some time with you for, wouldn't that be amazing?
Well,
Uh,
what leaders don't realize is the staff is what makes them. They don't. I did not make myself a great CNO. The staff and the leaders that allowed me to be their CNO made me that. They responded. They gave me the information that I needed so that I could advocate for them. When I was in management, the same thing. And the staff will make or break you.
100%.
Yep.
100%.
And if you don't realize that as a leader, you better get into a different profession, not
Amen.
leading.
Amen. Yep. It's gonna be tough to get through if you don't have great staff and
Yep.
they're really what's gonna support you, you know?
Yeah, they're there. They're there. And they're the ones that you're asking to come in and to do something for you. And if you're gonna be there for them, they're gonna be there for you.
You're absolutely right. What's the best advice a nurse mentor ever gave you?
To be myself, be true to myself and my values. Um, when I and actually once Gene Prail, when I ran for national president, people used to think, well, actually, I probably wasn't running for president. I was probably running for director. Sometimes people think that I don't have attention to detail, which I don't. And then I make, light of things and I'm not serious enough. So when I did my statement, I was very serious, in my delivery. And Gene Prail said to me, Papa, you're going to win. People are going to vote for you. But the people that don't know you don't realize that you're not like that. And it didn't sound like you. Just be you. I
It's
thought,
great advice.
that was really good advice. And so the next time when I was told to be me, so I'm going to be me.
I
I
love
but
I,
it,
lo-
you know,
I love that advice, especially for running for like an office like
mm,
national. Yeah.
and because what I was doing was taking feedback from people that said, sometimes you're not serious enough. And sometimes you need to, like I never read the script when I was on the thing. Never. And they
I
used
bet that
to,
drove them crazy.
oh, but I said everything that had to be said.
Yeah.
We did like crazy contests. We did shoe contests. We did all kinds of stuff.
I
But
remember.
I could stand it. I couldn't stand that thing. And then if I had to read certain things, I'd say, okay, I have to read here. Hold on. Whatever. And they would be like, oh my God, she's going to make it crazy. But I never went over. We always did whatever. And that people, that's how I am. So I thought, okay, they think I need to be more serious. So I was taking this kind of feedback and trying to be serious when I did my, candidate statement. And I did okay. And obviously I got elected, but I was much more comfortable when I didn't have to feel like I was worried about what somebody was going to think. Just do your own thing, be yourself.
Just be you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's great advice. I
People
love that.
hire you for you. They don't hire you because you're a little whatever that guy's name was, Stocksy or Stocky or whatever. They're hiring you because you're Kevin. They're hiring you because you've got this. They're hiring, they want you for that. They're voting for you because you've got that.
Yep.
Not because you're going to be like Matt Powers or like Ryan or like Anne Marie or like Patty Howard. They're going to be like you.
Oh
And
God.
there's something that you have that the members want.
I think that's great advice. And oh my gosh, I think that's great advice. So
I think we had lots of great presidents and we all think we did great jobs. But let me just tell you, Mike Hastings, Ron did a great job too with the COVID, but Mike Hastings, how he managed General Assembly and the year that he had what he had with COVID, I don't think there is one other president, not a damn one of us, that could have done it as good as he did it. And I think there's a lot of great presidents that I love dearly, but not a damn one of us could have done it as good as he did.
I like
He
that. I like that
really,
dude a lot.
and I told him that, I said, I think that I'm accomplished as a speaker. I think I'm accomplished as a leader, but I have to tell you, Michael, I do not think I could have done half as good a job as you did. So the members put who they need in that role for a reason, whether they're great in the role or whether they made a few little boo-boos in the role. Then sometimes the members need to learn those types of things as well, but he was in that for the right reason. Now, you know, um, Ron, everybody did a great job, but he was the first one in, and Adam Johnson in the resolutions, because that was for Fiasco, how he kept his cool. They were amazing.
I,
Amazing.
Adam. Oh, shout out to Adam. I love Adam. He's amazing.
Isn't it?
And
Yep.
I for years I called him the mayor of the ENA because
Yeah.
he was like the face during resolutions
Yeah.
committee. And
Yeah.
what a fiasco it was during with all
Yeah.
the,
And, and I had Jeff Jordan as resolutions when I was there, and he made me read that damn Robert's Rule book. So that's why I know because I could not listen to the parliamentarian talking in my ear. I just did my thing, and we had no problems that year. But it's only because of Jeff Jordan, and I think he's great at that. But I don't even think he could have done what Adam, like what I said, the members put certain people, certain places and when they need them.
and I think it's that. And I think also like amazing people just step up and do
Mhm.
amazing things when it's time, right? Like
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
you get up there and it's time to shine, and they do, and they shine.
Yep.
And I
They
love
do.
that.
Yeah.
So
So that's what I'm telling people. Just, be yourself, be true to yourself, because that's
yeah,
most important.
I love that. Love that. What else do you want to talk about?
Well, I am on the board of something called Emotional PPE, and it is an organization that people can dial into and connect with a therapist for free. And I'm really into getting people to understand the importance of their emotional well-being. It is so important. Like, I just go and get a pedicure like it's nothing, right? Or a facial or whatever. But would I do that same thing with calling a therapist like it was nothing? Would I announce to my friends, "Hey, I'm going to go get my head taken care of. I'm going to go to a therapist." And they're like, "No." Well, I would, but maybe some people wouldn't. And we need to normalize that, because kids in nursing school are struggling with things. It's really hard, and they feel like, "Oh, I need to, buck it up and do it." No, if you need help, find it, get there, find. Yeah, and this organization, I'm thrilled to be on the board because it's free. And people like it
Love
because
that.
they don't want to go to their EAP because they think the EAP is connected to work. So this is totally not. And there's therapists in each state, and and it's new. And we're just going to connect with the Lorna Breen as, association as well, organization as well. So it's in its infancy. We're growing, but even if they don't use that organization, I want people to take care of their emotional health. And that's selfish for me, especially the young nurses, because I'm going to be needing them. I'm getting older. And when I look up from my stretcher, I tell people, if I'm teaching you, I got to teach you to be better than me. Because when I'm looking up at you, I need to know you know more than I know. And that's important to me.
I,
So, their emotional well-being, feeds into that.
yeah. And that's something that nurses aren't always good at taking care of, right? Like
Mhm.
they're not always
We
good at
don't.
taking care of their emotions. And we talked about this. Did a recent episode on how not to kill your patient with Lisa, and we talked about how nurses are so good at compartmentalizing everything. You see this
Yeah.
terrible, tragic thing, and you just kind of put it away, and you're like, not crying about that, not talking about that, not thinking about that.
Right.
But that shit weighs on
You
you,
got it.
and
Mhm.
eventually it's gonna kind of fall down on your head, and if you don't take care of it, you're not gonna get any better.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always like, when there was the first code for nurses where I worked, I always made sure I touched base with them, or anybody that had a violent issue.
Yeah,
When I was director at Penn, we had a nurse that was punched in triage, and I touched base with him as his director, but he was very angry that the chief nurse didn't reach out because he felt. And so I took that. I learned from that. So then I was chief nurse. I was sure reach out. And I gave that feedback to our chief nurse, and she did reach out to him, and he did some fabulous work with workplace violence on that. But and when I first came out of nursing school, if you got hit, oh well, you got hit. It was an okay thing. It was part of the job, and it's not. And
yeah,
if people spoke nasty to you, it's not. And if you cried at a code, people made fun of you. You know,
yeah,
that's what makes you you. That's, again, be true to you. Be true to yourself, and find the people, find your tribe that, will let you be true to you.
yeah. That's important. It's important to do. So we'll definitely include a link to the emotional PPE project.
Yeah, I just want people to be aware of that. I want them to be aware that it's not, it's not a stigma to do that.
Yeah, I
It's
love
not,
that.
it's a wonder. It takes courage. My daughter struggled with addiction, and I was very open about that. And there were people that came to me and said, Why, aren't you embarrassed?" I said, Why am I embarrassed? It's I'm getting her help, she's getting the help she needs, and then it was really weird how many people would come and see me and say, "My son, my daughter, my niece, my this, but I don't want anybody to know." And I'll be like, "Okay, well, here's what I do, and here's the book I read, and here's what made that important for me." So, that's just my way. Not everybody is like that, and, there's probably some things that I wouldn't wanna be out, but, there's always there's always somebody that's gonna be there to help you.
One of
And
the
it's
one
not a weakness.
yeah. One of the things I always tell people, and the example I use is I do a talk about self-injury. I do a talk about self-injury and cutting and self-harm. And every single time I do that lecture, somebody comes to me and goes,
I bet.
"That's me.
Yeah.
That either
Mhm.
was me or that is me." I've had people come up and show me their scars, and I'm just like,
Yep.
"Oh God!" And
Mhm.
I go, "God, I hope I did your topic some justice."
Right.
And I feel, but every single time I do that talk, somebody says that that's me.
Yeah.
Like that's exactly where I've been and what I've been doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and the same thing we talk about when I talk about kind of having intrusive thoughts and people having thoughts of suicide and stuff. And not that I've ever had that, but I know plenty of people who have.
Mhm. Me too.
And anytime you talk about that, like people are like, I connect with
Mhm.
that. And if you're open and honest about it, and I talk about, I've talked in many episodes, I've talked about, addiction and how, my family has been just riddled with addiction. Um, and it's as a family member and as someone who loves someone who has been addicted, like I have a,
Oh,
a different a
yep.
different feeling for it than maybe someone who hasn't experienced that. But um,
It's
it's
hard.
it's hard. It
Mhm. It's
sucks.
very, very hard. Absolutely. But just imagine, Kevin, what impact you're having with those lectures, how you're validating for those people that have had those experiences that they matter.
Yeah.
That it's important, that people care, and that's, part of their healing process. So you're a part of their healing process, and you probably don't even realize it.
Yeah. I'm doing a talk at SES on nurse suicide.
Ah,
And I'm
I'll
like,
be there.
but I'm like, that's such a heavy topic. And I'm
It
like,
is.
man, this is gonna be a heavy one. And I was like, I gotta
Yeah,
do justice to this topic because it's a big deal. And more important than saying, what I really want to say is like, how do you keep an eye on your peers and how do you know when to say, hey, maybe you need something. Maybe you
yeah.
need something like this emotional PPE
Mhm.
and and do that respectfully and
Ye
give people that
eh,
option. And when I put in that topic, we had just recently had we had a nurse leader who had recently resigned. She resigned from her director of the ER position, for mental health reasons, and then like very soon after she killed herself.
Mhm.
And
It's
the
sad.
community,
And
the
how you
community,
feel. Yeah,
heartbroken. The community is
yeah.
heartbroken. Everyone's heartbroken
And
for
I'm
them.
sure I'm sure in your talk that, if they're going to do it, they're going to do it. I had
100%.
I had a PCA when I was a manager, one of my first manager positions, and she really struggled. And I made her go to EAP. I wouldn't let her come back to work. You could do 2 mandatory visits. I don't have to know what they're about, but I made her go. She was, madder as a hornet at me. How dare I use my power to make her do that? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, I need you to do this. I'm not going to ask you what you're going to talk about, but I need you to go. So, and the EIP judge reports back that she did made her commitment of 2 meetings. Little did I know that she continued on. And then when I left that job, I went to my next job and I'm unpacking my boxes of books and things. And sure enough, in there is an envelope and it's from this nurse, this PCA. And she said, I know I was mad at you for making me get help, but I need to thank you.
Wow.
Now, I will tell you, 15 years later, she did kill herself.
Yeah.
It's a very heavy, and there's a lot of that out there. And um, in this emotional PPE, we talk a lot about that, and it's not just for nurses; it's for physicians, it's for physical therapists, occupational therapists, it's for anyone in the healthcare arena.
Yep. Yeah.
But I'll
It-
see you at CES. I'll be there. So
I'm super
it's
excited. It's going
great.
to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh, it
doing,
is fun.
it's one of my favorite conferences. One of my
Yeah,
favorite conferences.
it's
And
good. That one in Jersey
it's been
are
years
always
since I've
good.
done it. And I did Jersey, I think 2 years ago. And that was a hoot. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
Um, but I haven't done SES in years. It's been years since I've done SES. And I think SES was one of the first conferences I went to, and I was actively involved in ENA, but I didn't know anybody. But
Yeah.
SES, one of the things I realized was like, it was like the immediate president or the president, the immediate past
Yeah.
president, the
Yeah.
president-elect, like all like a who's who of nursing.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
remember
Same as
just being
Jersey.
like, I remember just walking around going like, holy cow, look at all these people that like are
My
it's
first
impressive.
conference, my very first conference as a young nurse was the Jersey ENA conference. And so I guess it was before I was president. Um, I guess maybe 20, whatever. They asked me to be the keynote. you know? And I've been the keynote a couple of times for either the keynote or the closing a couple of times for Jersey. And one of the things I talked about was, how many of you is this your first conference? Well, you need to know that in 1978 or nine, whatever year it was, this was my very first conference. And one of you that's here is going to be up here one day. And look at that.
100%.
And people
Yeah.
cracked up, but
And
it is true.
yeah. My very first ENA conference I went to. Do you know who the very first person I talked to that wasn't from my state?
Oh,
Chris Geisness.
Chris, oh, God bless her.
Very first person I talked to. And
She's
like
such a sweetheart.
she was standing behind me in the line and she was like, "Hey, what are you doing? Where are you from? How's it going?" And when we just started
That's
chatting,
her.
and every year since then, like I make it a point to make sure to say hello to
Yeah.
her. I just love seeing her every single time. And
She's a sweet lady,
yeah. And
a good friend and a sweet lady.
you put me on my very first ENA, National ENA
Committee, future of nursing,
Future of Nursing. Yes, yes,
future of
yes.
nursing. Yeah.
You
Uh-huh.
put me on the Future
Yeah.
of Nursing committee, and I remember I applied, and I had never met you, and I applied, and then at the conference that year, I think it may have been at leadership. I don't remember. You made it a point to come say hi to me. You said, "Hey, you know what? Your application is sitting on my table." She's like, "You're like, are you an associate's prepared? Are you diploma? Are you bachelor's?" And I told you I was an associate's prepared nurse, and you're like, "If you're a diploma, you're in. You're a lock." But you're like, as an associate's, you're like, "I got to get back to you." But I go, she's like, "But you said I just want to meet you and say hello." And I was like, thought
Uh-huh.
that's just the coolest thing. And then got on this
Uh,
committee with incredible people. It was like a who's
yeah.
who of emergency nursing. And then, a handful of us, brand new folks. And what a cool thing. And just kind of got me more excited about, being part of ENA and being part of, national meetings and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So
And that's what it is. You just have to get somebody and find out what their interest is. And, you know, their interest may not be what your interest is, but find their interest and get
yeah.
them there and move them
Mhm.
along in it.
I have one last
That's all
question.
right.
If I don't ask you,
Sure.
people will kill me. So
Uh-oh.
this question we're gonna tweak a little bit. This question is called three things, and it's three things to remember and three things to forget. Now, I want to tweak this a little bit. And again, this is gonna be kind of more geared towards leaders, but what are three things a new ER leader should always remember? And what are three things just forget? Don't do that, just forget.
Okay. Well, number one, as I said before, the staff makes you. Number two, the staff is your first customer. Number three, be true to yourself. And remember that God gave you 2 ears and one mouth so that you can listen more than you talk.
Love that. Love that.
Coming from somebody who talks as much as me.
That's why we get along so well. That's why we get along so well.
Yep. Yep.
And what are three things I can just forget?
Three things to forget. We always did it that way.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely forget that. Um, Forget the rule book as black and white. Use it as something to inform your style. The rule book is not always right. The rule book can inform your style. And forget people that tell you can't do it, because you can.
Love that. That's awesome.
That would be what I would say.
That and your credentials. Your
Okay.
credentials, I'll put those on there as well. And then I'll let you know when this episode's coming out. So
Yeah, good. And I should have probably said, your credentials don't make you. Your heart makes you.
uh, we're gonna add that in because I think that's yeah,
Yeah.
the credentials are cool. The
They
credentials are
are,
cool.
and they're important,
And I got a lot of them. And I
and
got a
they
lot of 'em back.
validate, and
And
they validate.
but one of the things I find they do validate you, and I think, but one of the things I find is that for as cool as a lot of people think they are, and as there's like they're like, oh, look at all these credentials. A lot of people don't give a shit about them. Like they
It's
don't
about
even,
the person.
they don't know what they don't know what they need. They don't know what they
Yep.
are. They don't know what they mean. They don't know anything. So
Yeah.
just having credentials to have credentials
It's
is
not.
is not uh,
Exactly.
is not the way to go. Like you're right. It's about the person.
It's about
So
your heart. Yep. Absolutely.
I think that I love that because you see all these people getting the high five or
Yeah.
and I'm like,
I checked the box. I tell you.
yeah, it's check the box. And one of the things
And
I
I'm
always tell,
proud of them. And I think it's wonderful that
I
they
think it's
do it.
cool. I think it's
Just
cool.
do
And
it for the right reason.
I tell people all the time, like, I look at like the flight credential for instance, I look at the flight credential and
Mhm.
could I pass that test? Yeah, I could pass that test.
But why?
It's 90% ENA, it's 90% CEN stuff anyway. It's just, that little bit
Yeah.
of flight physiology stuff. And I'm a smart dude. I can learn that stuff. But me having that certificate cheapens that certificate. Like,
Right.
because there's cheapens that cert. Like
Yep.
it doesn't, like I don't do that justice. And I would feel like
Exactly.
a faker. And there's so many people that have the CFRN who've never stepped foot in an air.
Yep.
And
You're right.
it's just silly. So
Yep. That's why I never got the CPN. I mean, I would have passed that because I took care of kids all my life
yeah.
in the AED, but I wasn't a pediatric person. So I thought, why
I
did I
had
get
the
that?
CPAN. I had the CPAN when it first came out and I let it lapse. And I always keep threatening to go back and get it. And then I'm like, why do another cert? Like the certs that and the reality is like my hospital and my role right now, they don't care about any of my certs.
They don't
They're like,
care.
nobody cares. Like
Yeah.
they go on your email. I put them on my email
Yeah.
signature. They're all there. And I don't know how many times I've had people reach out and say, well, what's it FAEN? What is that? What does that mean?
Yeah.
And
Fan.
they're like, yeah, like what does that mean? I don't know I don't understand that.
Yeah.
And then my CNO asked me that, and I told her, and she's like, "That's kind of a big deal." She's like, "You should like
Yeah.
make a big deal about that." And I'm like, that and 250 will get me a cup of coffee at Starbucks, right?
Right. She's the one that should make a big deal about that, not you.
And that's what I said. I said, yeah, if you want to do something about it, I'm
Yeah.
happy. I go, I'm probably, I go, I know for sure I'm the only one in this hospital and probably the only one in the system that has it. But whatever. So, anyways, I can't thank you
All
enough
right.
for your time.
That was
Holy cow.
I'm glad we finally got to connect.
I am too.
That's
This has been
great.
a lot of fun, and I'll see you in SES. Yeah, it's gonna be fun. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot
Yeah,
of
it
fun.
will
So,
be. It will be. All
thank
right.
you so much for your
See you,
time,
Kevin.
and I'll talk to you
Thank
soon.
you.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Be healthy.
Thanks for listening to the Art of Emergency Nursing podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Facebook.